Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hey Ghost Heads, it's Heidi from Channeling Spirits. When it comes to monsters, Frankenstein's famous one probably comes second to only Dracula in popularity. So if you're looking for a costume of Frankenstein's monster, you're probably going to find a flat top, green skin, stitches, bolts, clunky shoes, outstretched arms, and the monster's favorite moan. But just like our exploration with Dracula's appearance, that isn't exactly how the creature was originally envisioned in Mary Shelley's 1818 novel. A lot of adaptations have amended how we view the reanimated corpse that is Frankenstein's creation. Today we'll be bringing to life Shelley's original description of the monster that stalked her titular character. By exploring the multitude of media, including theater and film, that brought back the creature, we'll discover the enduring features that have combined in our collective consciousness. Mary Shelley's inspiration for Frankenstein came during a sunless summer in Geneva while sharing ghost stories. She awoke from a nightmare which would grow to become what many considered to be the first work of science fiction. Despite such a claim, the science as to how Victor Frankenstein resurrected the corpse is quite vague. Shelley intentionally leaves this a mystery, having Victor explain, "I see by your eagerness and the wonder and hope which your eyes express, my friend, that you expect to be informed of the secret with which I am acquainted. That cannot be. Listen patiently until the end of my story, and you will easily perceive why I am reserved upon that subject." What Shelley says regarding the process is scant, and we can only infer how he brought about reanimation. Chapters 4 and 5 of the novel explain Frankenstein's epiphany and the birth of his beast. We know Victor was a student of natural philosophy and particularly chemistry. He begins to focus on physiology and anatomy, and at this point states that he believed a churchyard was to me merely the receptacle of bodies deprived of life. Frankenstein studied in vaults and charnel houses, the modern equivalent being morgues and crematoriums. It is there he finally has a breakthrough and understands how to resurrect the dead. Victor boasts, "After days and nights of incredible labor and fatigue, I succeeded in discovering the cause of generation in life. Nay, more, I became myself capable of bestowing animation upon lifeless matter." He later mentions this is his first success, but doesn't elaborate on what he reanimated. It does lead him to give life to an animal as complex and wonderful as a man, meaning it likely wasn't a human being. At this point, it is important to mention one of Shelley's inspirations, Luigi Galvani, the father of galvanism. Galvani discovered bioelectricity when he touched an electrode to a pair of dead frog legs, causing them to kick. In Shelley's 1831 introduction to the novel, she states, "Perhaps a corpse would be reanimated. Galvanism had given token of such things. Perhaps the component parts of a creature might be manufactured, brought together, and endued with vital warmth." Victor also repeatedly refers to corpse as materials and parts.
Raw materials, that's all they are.
But at no point in the novel is there mention of sewing, stitching, or suturing body parts. Shelley's introduction, 13 years after publication, is the first mention of parts being brought together. Frankenstein states that the minutiae of the human frame caused him to work on a larger scale. He opts to make the creature 8 feet in height and proportionally large.
In other words, his veins, his feet, his hands, his organs would all have to be increased in size.
Exactly.
He would have an enormous Schwanzstücke.
Victor says he dabbled among the unhallowed damps of the grave and collected bones from charnel houses. With his materials assembled, Shelley paints a gothic scene for the reanimation. "It was on a dreary night of November that I beheld the accomplishment of my toils. With an anxiety that almost amounted to agony, I collected the instruments of life around me that I might infuse a spark of being into this lifeless thing that lay at my feet. It was already 1 a.m. The rain pattered dismally against the panes, and my candle was nearly burnt out, when by the glimmer of the half-extinguished light, I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. Frankenstein infusing a spark is the only hint that he used galvanism to reanimate the corpse. It may very well have been more chemical in nature, but Shelley's introduction and the subtle hints the novel provides seem to inform us of how she believed the monster came to be. The creature's eye is first described as yellow, then watery and clouded. His skin is also yellow and scarcely covers his muscles and arteries. His hair is black and flowing, later described as long locks of ragged hair. His pearly white teeth contrast his black lips, and he can scarcely communicate. The novel doesn't divulge more on his appearance, other than mentioning how hideous or mummy-like he is. The one unusual part about a novel reanimating a corpse is the idea that Frankenstein would find several 8-foot-tall bodies to assemble together. In the 1700s, it would have been rare to have a man over 8 feet, but multiple? We believe that the base body used must have had gigantism and possibly acromegaly. Acromegaly results from excessive growth hormones that cause enlargement of the forehead, jaw, and nose. Could such a disorder account for Victor describing it as hideous? Or is that more in disgust of his creation? 5 years after Shelley's novel, the first theatrical adaptation of her work was made, Presumption, or The Fate of Frankenstein. This adaptation would take several liberties from the source material, some which would become staples. It is the first time Dr. Frankenstein has an assistant known as Fritz. This character would have the same name in the famous 1931 film, where he would become a hunchback who is commonly believed to be Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
The process by which Frankenstein creates his monster is again mysterious and happens off stage, but he does exclaim, "It lives! It lives!" Because few theaters had received royal patents in their day, most plays then had to include music, pantomime, and spectacle to be legally staged. The decision was made to have the creature be mute to fulfill the pantomime requirement. This would also carry on in several adaptations, leading to the monster often only expressing growls and moans. Despite his eloquence in the novel.
I do know that for the sympathy of one living being, I would make peace with all. I have love in me the likes of which you can scarcely imagine, and rage the likes of which you would not believe. If I cannot satisfy the one, I will indulge the other.
Karloff was vehemently against the monster speaking in the sequel. The play also refers to the creature as a hobgoblin, possessing super strength for the first time and having blue skin. For the description of the monster's appearance, the script says, his face, hands, arms, and legs all bare, being one color, the same as his body, which is a light blue. It is another departure from Shelley's design, perhaps meant to immediately convey his monstrous appearance to an audience, which yellow skin would not have. The 1831 edition of the novel would feature this famous frontispiece, an image officially approved by the author. Other portrayals would follow. And in 1910, the first film adaptation of the monster would lean heavily on his hideous nature. The most famous film would be adapted from another play, Frankenstein, An Adventure in the Macabre, by Peggy Webling, written in 1927. This play inexplicably changes Victor Frankenstein into Henry and has a child drowned by the monster. This play also has the creature take on the name Frankenstein.
No, it's pronounced Frankenstein.
Which may have created the popular misconception of calling the creature by the creator's name. From this play came the most famous incarnation of the story, James Whale's classic film. And though Boris Karloff certainly deserves an incredible amount of credit for his depiction, the unsung hero is Jack Pierce. Pierce was the makeup artist who designed what most of us think of when we imagine Frankenstein's monster. The movie delved deep into how the monster was made, which included stitching together corpses and placing a brain in the body. Pierce remarked on his thought process for giving the creature a flat head. I discovered there are 6 ways a surgeon can cut the skull, and I figured Dr. Frankenstein, who was not a practicing surgeon, would take the easiest. That is, he would cut the top of the skull straight across like a pot lid, hinge it, pop the brain in, and clamp it tight. That's the reason I decided to make the monster's head square and flat like a box. Whale leaned heavily into Shelley's notion of reanimating through galvanism and used a dramatic lightning storm to bring the monster to life. Pierce placed electrodes on the creature's neck to transfer the energy into his body. Boris Karloff was 5'11", or 180 centimeters, and he wore heavy shoes with lifts to increase his stature. The shoes weighed 13 pounds each and were known as hot asphalt boots. They were used by men who had to work with freshly poured asphalt on the roads. This may have contributed to the slow gait of the monster, but having his arms outstretched came in 1942's The Ghost of Frankenstein. After having Igor's brain inserted into the monster, it goes blind due to incompatible blood types and stumbles around. Since all of the Universal films are in black and white, it's hard to tell what color Frankenstein's monster was intended to be. Jack Pierce allegedly made a unique green grease paint for the monster. Like the decision to make him blue-skinned, the green makeup would provide an eerie contrast to the monochrome film. Several posters illustrated a green-skinned monster, which would continue into several sequels. From 1957 to 1974, Hammer Film Productions created a series of films about Frankenstein. The series constant is Peter Cushing as Victor Frankenstein, who creates a variety of reanimated creatures which vary in appearance. Some look closer to Shelley's description, with yellowing skin and a white eye to Pierce's green-skinned flat top. The monster's gangrene exterior would be further cemented into the public consciousness with Herman Munster. Lampooning the Universal movies, Herman featured bolts, black lips, and stitches. In the feature film Munster Go Home, Herman appears in the classic green skin. As with Dracula, famous monsters of filmland featured colorful covers of black and white creatures and frequently showcased the monster in yellowish-green hues. Green versions of the creature became prominent in toys, cartoons, and comics, and has become how it is popularly depicted. Despite Shelley's original description, most adaptations stray far from its source material. Even 1994's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which went to great lengths to be true to the novel, has the monster as a stitched-up Robert De Niro. Perhaps the closest portrayal is in the series Penny Dreadful, with his amber eyes, dark lips, and his hair black and flowing. Still, Shelley intended him to look more like this, rather than the moaning, green flat top full of bolts, stitches, and big boots. But just as Victor brought new life to a once dead thing, who knows what shape the next monster will take in our imagination. If you enjoyed this video and think we deserve it,
Could be worse. How? Could be raining.
please subscribe. I'm Heidi with Channeling Spirits, and thanks for watching.